and welcome back to North 100, your Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Liam, and joining me today is Jer. We haven't lost a person this week. We successfully maintained the number of hosts.
Status quo, at least.
For 1 week, and next week we'll be back up to 3, so look forward to that. Hopefully. That's true.
You never know.
Right, anything could happen. A reminder that this show, like every show on the Loading Ready Run Network, is brought to you by you with your support over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. So thanks so much for that. We couldn't do it without you. Today we're going to be doing the Battlebond set review. I know there's been a lot of comments about, hey, it's just Liam and Jer on the show. Why aren't they arguing about things? Sorry, something's in the works.
About things, just like, you know.
We got something in the works eventually, hopefully, but
maybe
there wasn't enough time to come up with a compelling argument. That card's actually not very good either. So
it's not. We agree
on that one. So let's start with our opening segment today, and that's the best card you're not playing, and that's going to be you, Jared. What's the card we're talking about today?
All right, so today's card will be no surprise to Pauper players. Today's card is Ash Barrens. It's a colorless land, enters the battlefield untapped, adds a colorless, or you can basic land cycle it for 1. Part of the reason I think this card is really powerful, it gets basics out, and right now in the format, that's really important. Being able to colorlessly find a basic is huge under Blood Moon. Obviously, the color fixing is nice. It's like plays very similarly to Evolving Wilds, but because of the fact that it cycles from your hand as opposed to entering the battlefield tapped, and its interaction with Blood Moon, I think it's like far superior to Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse.
It's also like not really a tap land, which is better.
Exactly, yeah. If you don't need the fixing, you can just play it as a colorless land. And some decks getting colorless lands is actively good as well because it can facilitate playing the Eldrazi colorless only cards. It also fuels Delve, like puts a card in your graveyard really early. Gets a type in your graveyard if you're going after Goyf/Delirium shenanigans. So I think it's just like a pretty innocuous card that I haven't seen many people playing yet.
No. Just
because like it sort of was printed in Commander and then printed in a Master set, and it's not on many people's radar, but I think it should be.
Well, and it looks like Evolving Wilds, which is not a playable card.
Exactly, yeah.
But is in fact considerably better.
I think it is considerably better and should just be in many more decks.
Do you think you could basically play this in any multicolored deck? Like for people looking for budget options, is this just something you should be looking to throw into your deck if you have a basic of every color?
Definitely, yeah. I think if you're playing 2 or 3 colors, or obviously more, and have basics in your deck, it should likely be in your deck.
Okay. Well, great. So that's the spice for today. A little more informative than usual, slightly less spicy, more like this will make your win percentage higher, but
yeah,
important nonetheless.
I've been looking at this card and I actually played it the last 2 weeks and it was super good for me every time. I got
to fork over dollars to get one.
I have a spare one.
Perfect. What did you do? Sorry, you were.
Yeah, I got to grow my Tarmogoyf at instant speed and get the extra point of damage I needed.
Surprise! All right, so today we're going to be doing the Battlebond set review. We're doing this in much the same way that we've done every set review previous. The one difference is there's slightly fewer cards in this set review, so we are going to be doing both Killer and Filler in this episode. We're going to start with Killer in Wooburg and somewhat alphabetical order. Serge wasn't here to correct my list creating, so it's not alphabetical this time, but it's in Wooburg order.
As usual, I just came in later and added and removed some cards just to goozle the order a little more.
Yeah, so we're going to do Wooburg, all the Killer, and then we're going to talk about all the Filler. Yeah, and just to quickly differentiate, Killer are cards we either already see a bunch of play and that have been reprinted, or cards that we think should see some amount of play or that are quite powerful.
Yeah.
And then Filler doesn't necessarily mean these cards are bad, but it means they might either be deceptively, they might look good but aren't actually that good, or they're just sort of like role player cards that are unassuming.
Or they fit into like a really niche archetype and aren't really like format staples, so to say. They'll see play in the one deck they see play in, but largely not apart from that.
And the first card we have today is a really exciting one. I received many tweets when this was spoiled. This is Arena Rector. So this is 3 and a white for a human cleric. Some people have started to send me cleric lists, by the way. This deck built itself. I didn't even have to do it. So when Arena Rector dies, you may exile it. If you do, search your library for a Planeswalker card, put it into the and then put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. GR, tell me about this card.
So I'm not quite as high on this card as some people that I've seen, just because I think it comes with a really big deck building constraint. I don't really think you want to put this in your deck unless there's at least one planeswalker that's like really integral to your game plan, or you're playing some really big planeswalkers like Ugin or Nicol Bolas or something like that, and you're already putting them in your deck for like good reasons, not just like, well, I have Arena Rector in my deck now, so that means I get to put Ugin and Nicol Bolas in for free, right? No, sometimes you draw those cards. So you need to have the necessary deck building constraints to put those cards in your deck apart from Arena Rector. But it is a really sweet card. It does enable some sweet lines of play, especially in like Super Frenzy decks when you have the toolbox of planeswalkers to go get sort of like whatever you need at the given time.
Yeah, and I don't think this is a card that's going to create its own archetype.
No.
But it's going to slot into some archetypes that are maybe like not quite as good. It's definitely going to make them better. Like, it's a high power level card.
Yeah,
it just requires fairly stringent deck building constraints. Like, you need to be already playing the really kind of 6+ mana planeswalkers.
Yeah, or you need to have one that's really key to your game plan. Like, I could see getting like Tezzeret with this in like
Tezzeret the Seeker.
Time Vault shells, exactly, yeah. Tezzeret the Seeker.
Okay.
So I think if you're playing like a white Time Vault deck, it's possible you could play this because landing Tezzeret is such a big deal in those decks.
Yeah, and it would be kind of multifunctional. You could find Tezzeret, you could find Jace.
Exactly, yeah. If you're not in a spot to win it at the immediate moment, you don't need to find Tezzeret. But
all right.
So I think it could be sort of utility or just power, but you definitely need one of the two.
Yep. So the next card we have is Breitling. This is the white card, and I think we've got 3 in the cycle, sort of 4 technically. There's Morphling, Aetherling, Thornling, and now Breitling. There's a red one too, actually. I don't remember what the red one is called. Anyway, there are many lings. So this is a shapeshifter.
There's 2 blue lings too.
Yeah, Aetherling and Morphling.
Yeah.
So this is 1 white for a shapeshifter. It has 4 abilities. Sorry. It has pay 1 white, it gets Vigilance. Pay 1 white, it gets Lifelink. Pay a single white mana, not 1 and a white. Pay a single white mana, return Breitling to its owner's hand, and then for a generic mana, you can give it either +1/-1 or -1/+1 until end of turn, and it's a 3/3. So this card is actually really interesting. Jared and I didn't fully agree. You might get some of the disagreeing here. Agree where this card fit in. Some of the more prominent like mono-white players have said, yeah, maybe I'll try this either in Death and Taxes or White Weenie, but that spot on the curve is really competitive. But I actually think this card's potentially really good in the Mardu aggro decks or in the Mardu mid-range decks. I think the deck I'm most excited to try this out in is Blue-White Control, because it's a cheap threat that comes down that protects itself, which I think is really good, and getting lifelink can be really relevant for those control decks. So those are the 2 decks I'm sort of most excited to try it in, is Blue-White Control and Mardu aggro. I also think in the sort of like Blue-White mid-range tempo aggro control deck, it might be good too. I just think that having more powerful 3-mana threats is good. Obviously, the one caveat here with Breitling that's pretty awkward, it's very colored mana intensive. Like, it's greedy for you to play a lot of white pips, and many decks are just splashing white. So I don't think this is going to see a lot of widespread play, but I do think it's going to be a good card in the deck that can play it.
Yeah, I'm most excited for it in mid-range decks, probably either blue-white or green-white decks that like will have the number of white mana available to really utilize this card, because really it almost really costs 1 white, because you really want to have at least the return activation up when you play it. You don't really want to tap out of white mana for this card. So it's almost like a triple white 4-drop, to me at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's context where just having the ability to make it have 4 toughness is enough. But I agree with you that, like, in general, you might want to be able to return it. All right, so that's Breitling. The next card is Swords to Plowshares. This card is a reprint. It's the most powerful white removal spell. If you are playing a white deck that wants removal spells, you should play this card. If you don't have one and you open one, congratulations, now you have one and you should play it.
Yeah, this card you can play in every white deck. Not all the combo decks want to play it, but if you're playing a removal spell in your white deck, this is the best one.
It's almost certainly Swords. The next card we have is Doomed Traveler. So this is we didn't say what Swords to Plowshares did. It's a single white mana, and it's an instant that says exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to that creature's power. So Doom Traveler is also a single white. This is a creature, it's a human soldier, and when Doom Traveler dies, you create a 1/1 white spirit token with flying, and Doom Traveler itself is a 1/1. Jared, talk to me about this card.
So this card goes in basically one of two strategies that either goes in Aristocrats, which is looking to sacrifice creatures to accrue value, and most of those creatures have either ETB triggers or, more commonly, when this creature dies triggers. And that's where Doom Travel comes in. You actually upgrade the body you get when you sacrifice it. Or it can go in tokens, just because it's a really cheap creature that can block early and creates a flying token when it dies, which is a big deal for that deck.
All right, and that's actually all the white killer cards. There's not a ton of them. So now we're going to move on to blue, and the first blue card we're talking about is Rowan Kenneth. So this is a 4 blue planeswalker. It's a legendary planeswalker Will, which is kind of funny. I don't know why. And so it has a couple of abilities. The first is that it comes with 4 loyalty, and for +2 until your next turn, up to 2 target creatures each have base power and toughness of 0/3 and lose all abilities. For -2, target player draws 2 cards, and until your next turn, instant sorcery and planeswalker spells that player cost 2 less to cast, 2 generic less to cast. And then for a -8, target player gets an emblem with whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. Also, it partners with Rowan Kenneth, and it can be your commander. Now, Jared, I actually have a judge question. I'm putting you on the spot here. This is the old version of partner, right, where Will and Rowan Kenneth can be your commander at the same time. It's not when you play Will, you get to search up Rowan.
It is when you play Will, you get to search
You get to
up
search.
Rowan.
Okay. That is not explained in the tooltip. But
not,
partner with is the important part, right? It doesn't have
Yeah.
partner. Okay, so it also searches for another planeswalker when it comes into play.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure partner is like its own
Keyword.
ability that lets you have it as a commander with another partner. But I think partner with is the search for.
Okay, makes sense. So talk to me about this planeswalker. Why is it on the list? Why are we talking about it?
So this is just a pretty reasonable value card. I don't think you necessarily need to have it with Rowan. We'll talk about Rowan a little further in the episode. Spoilers. But I think this card is just a pretty reasonable value card by itself. Its +2 is really good at protecting itself. It protects itself from 2 creatures, and with a +2, it gets itself pretty far out of creature range. So like if they have 3 creatures, you get to like turf the best 2 creatures until your next turn. It maybe gets hit by 1 creature, but that creature, their 3rd best creature, probably doesn't have 6 power, so it's probably living. If you play it on an empty board, its -2 is pretty insane.
Yeah.
And its ultimate should win you the game eventually. It's not actually a very good ultimate. I don't imagine you use it very often. You probably just want to +2 or -2 repeatedly as you can, but
yeah,
I think this card is just a good value card.
Yeah. So what kind of decks are you thinking? Like Blue Eye Control?
Yeah,
maybe the Planeswalker decks, obviously.
Yeah, the Planeswalker decks, any bigger control deck. I'm not sure most blue control decks are willing to tap out for this card. So I'd be more looking into it in like a tap out strategy, like a ramp deck or a Planeswalker deck, as you said earlier.
And there were some comments on the Facebook thread about this in High Tide. Jared and I both don't think so, but I've actually thought about it a little bit more, and I'm like now in the maybe camp. It's 6 mana, so it's really, really expensive, but
yeah,
-2 for your stuff is good.
I just don't think you have time to play a 6 mana setup card.
I don't think it's a setup card. I think you play it mid combo. I think you're playing it as 6 mana, draw 2 cards, all your instants and sorceries cost -2 for the rest of the game.
Yeah, that's really hard when you're comparing it to stuff like Time Spiral and Mind's Desire, which are the only other 6 mana cards.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm just saying, like, I might try it. I might be willing to. All right, the next card on our list is True Name Nemesis. Holy heck, they reprinted this card. So fortunately, this set is not a 1v1 draft set, because otherwise this card at Rare would be absolute, or it's Mythic, right?
No,
I'm pretty sure
it's probably Mythic.
But anyway, this card is miserable. So this is 1 blue for a Merfolk Rogue. It's a 3/1. And as True Name Nemesis enters the battlefield, choose a player. True Name Nemesis has protection from the chosen player. And so this was printed in a commander set. The idea was you play it and you say like, all right, there's 4 of us playing a commander game. Jared's sort of ahead. I'm going to choose Jared so he can't hurt me. Problematically, when Jared and I are the only two in the game, this card just becomes next to unkillable. So this card's a point. It's on the points list. It's insane. Basically, a lot of the blue decks that are playing creatures are often playing True Name Nemesis. This card, when comboed with equipment, is absolutely backbreaking. It often just wins the game on its own. This card's really, really insane. So if you're playing a blue deck and you have extra points lying around and you open one of these, congratulations. You should probably put it in your deck. It's great.
I'm shocked you haven't mentioned that it turns on Prowl yet.
It does turn on Prowl, but it's Merfolk Prowl, so it's like...
It's also Rogue Prowl.
I guess so. It's okay. It does go in that deck, for sure. But it wasn't what I was thinking of. But yeah, so it also activates Prowl. So True Name, great. If you have points for it, it fits into a lot of the blue decks. The next card we're talking about is Arcane Artisan. So this is 2 and a blue for a 0/3. Human Wizard, and this card has a bunch of text. So for 2 and a blue and tapping it, you can make it so the target player draws a card, then exiles a card from their hand. If a creature card is exiled this way, that player creates a token that's a copy of that card. When Arcane Artisan leaves the battlefield, exile all tokens created with it at the beginning of the next end step. Jer, you wanted this card on the list. Why the heck is this card good?
So I just think there's a lot of potential for this card that is going to need to be explored. Like, I'm not going to be able to say exactly what this card does, but like, there's definitely some big cheats potential. The fact that the tokens don't go away right away means it's like super, super risky to attack into this card ever if your opponent has 3 mana up. If they're just like sitting there with Arcane Artisan and like any number of cards in hand, are you going to attack and potentially get like Grizzle branded?
Or Emrakul?
Yeah, exactly. And it says beginning of the next end step, so you can like do the classic, all right, your end step, make a thing. My turn, make a thing.
Oh, the tokens stay around forever until this thing dies.
Yeah, but like...
even if they kill it. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, so it's just powerful in that sense.
Yeah, so it's just like, I just think the ceiling on this card is so high. I'm not positive there's a shell for it right now, but like, I just think there's huge potential.
Okay. The next card we're talking about is Mystic Confluence. So this is 3 generic blue for an instant. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. The first mode is counter target spell unless the controller pays 3. The second mode is return target creature to its owner's hand. And the third mode is draw a card. This is a premier blue counter spell. If your deck is going up to 5, you're playing this card. Sometimes if your deck isn't going up to 5, you're going up to 5 to play this card.
This is often the only 5 mana spell, apart from Force of Will, you play in your blue mid-range decks.
Yeah. It's just a lot of utility. The fact that it's like 9 is basically always countering a spell, so like at the very worst it's 5 mana counter spell. And then a lot of the times you'll see Mystic Confluence do disgusting things where it's like counter your spell, bounce your threat, I draw a card. There's just sort of a bunch of things. Like it can often be fog, it can be bounce your 3 things. It's better than fog, in fact. It's like just being triple bounce spell is great. Just being like a draw spell. It's like slightly better than opportunity.
Yeah, the reason this card is so good is because it's great when you're even, just like having a counter spell when you're even is often exactly where the blue deck wants to be. It's great when you're behind, being able to bounce their board is great, and it's great when you're ahead, just like end step, I draw 3, or even just hold up the counter.
It's just always good. So again, this card's great if you're playing a blue deck. You're potentially and almost certainly, well, not almost certainly, but you're likely playing this card.
Yes, likely going to want to at least.
Yeah. The next card we're talking about is Tidespout Tyrant. So this is 5 blue for a Djinn, if you will. It's a flying 5/5, and whenever you play a spell, you return target permanent to its owner's hand. So this is like a Reanimator card, right? What else does it do?
Yeah, it's a Reanimator target. It's also, I think, best in this format in Food Chain. As a food chain target, because you get to cast it with your food chainable creature. It generates you infinite creature mana, and then you just get to keep casting the food chain creature from exile and bounce all their permanents forever.
Yeah, so really quick for people who don't know, Food Chain is an enchantment for 2 and a green that says exile a creature, you gain mana of any color +1 equal to its CMC that can only be used on creatures.
Casting creatures.
Yeah, to cast creatures. And if you have Mist Hollow-Griffin or Eternal Scourge or Squee, the new Squee, you can just make infinite mana because you're always +1 and you can then cast those creatures from exile. So what Jared's talking about here is that you're going to make infinite mana with Food Chain +1 of those creatures. Then you're going to cast Tidespout Tyrant. Then you're going to keep casting those creatures that you can cast infinitely to bounce your opponent's board basically forever. Yeah, they're just never going to have a board and you're going to kill them with this 5/5.
Yeah, you can kill them with a wet noodle at that point.
Yeah. The next card we're talking about is Sower of Temptation. So this is 2 blue for a fairy wizard. It has flying, and when Sower of Temptation enters the battle, comes into play, gain control of target creature as long as Sower of Temptation remains in play, and it's a 2/2. So this is a card that's kind of interesting. It sees less play than I think people might think it does, but it's also, I think, a card that might be underplayed.
I was gonna say this might be a best card you're not playing, at least in our local meta right now.
Yeah,
like
not played super often.
It's got super high upside, obviously. Bind control magic on a 2/2 flyer is super good.
At the very least, it's almost always a very good tempo swing because you can take the creature, and even if they then kill the Sower on their turn, their creature has summoning sickness. So like it's as though you unsummoned it and they recast it. I mean, sometimes they've got more mana than that, but at the very worst, it does that a lot of the time. And at the best, like you steal their best thing, you get to untap and protect this, or maybe on 6 mana or something, you play this with a counterspell backup, take the best thing on the board.
And if you're going bigger, and you play this, they basically have to kill this, so it's enabling your bigger creatures that are coming down later. There's going to be at least one less removal spell because they just have to kill this card immediately.
Yep. Yeah, Sower's great. All right, the next card we're talking about has generated maybe the most buzz for a card, maybe ever for me actually, that I've seen.
People knew True Name Nemesis was busted when that card was.
Yeah, maybe. So this card is Spellseeker. So this is 2 and a blue for a human wizard. It's a 1/1, and when Spellseeker enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 2 or less. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Yeah, the absolute madmen. They actually did it.
It says cost 2. It's a sorcery as well as instant. Put it into your hand.
Yeah. Like
Holy God.
Yeah, a bunch of it's really good. So I mean, this card finds people have pointed out, it finds Ancestral, it finds Time Walk, it finds Demonic Tutor.
And then like more nefariously, it finds like Flash, it finds Balance, it finds like
Eladamri's Call.
High Tide, Eladamri's Call, yeah. It
finds everything. It's very good.
Yeah, it finds like your best cheap removal spell. Like even this card, just like 4 mana, play this, Swords to Plowshares, your best creature is like
still fine,
an insane play.
Like,
it finds Counterspell if you're just like ahead.
Yeah. So I do want to say though, I think this card is maybe being slightly overrated, to be honest.
I actually agree with you. Like 3 mana is a lot.
That's exactly what I was going to say too.
It's certainly got really, really high utility, but most of the tutors in our format that end up getting pointed are the tutors that enable really, really fast wins. Like the sort of philosophy behind pointing tutors is that your opponent should get like 1 or 2 turns to set up, but like after that you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Yeah, so go nuts.
It's really just the fast tutors that are pointed, and this card isn't a fast tutor.
It costs 3 is the important
like,
thing for me.
Yeah.
And so when you think about it, I mean, if those 3 cards I mentioned, right, like Demonic Tutor, Ancestral, Time Walk. So if you're tacking on the 3 mana for this, well, all of a sudden you're actually just casting Time Warp when you cast this into Time Walk. When you cast this into Ancestral, you're actually just casting Concentrate. Now, granted, you're putting Ancestral and Time Walk into your bin, and getting to recur them means that it's better than that. But this does cost 3. It's not something that happens super quickly. It's not, for instance, I think all that comparable to Merchant Scroll, which is I think a card like I think Merchant Scroll is better than this card by not a huge margin, but by some margin.
It depends. I think Merchant Scroll's ceiling is higher, but I think the like versatility of this card is like much broader.
Yeah.
If that makes sense to you. Like
it does, but this card doesn't cost 3. That's the important thing. Like 3 mana is a lot.
I know, yeah, but like creature decks get to play this card, like Time Walk creature decks, like that, where you're like playing Mana Dorks on turn 1, play this on turn 2, get Time Walk.
I honestly think that might be the deck where it's the most dangerous. Because I was thinking about it in the context of Flash Hulk. It's great because it finds Flash, but it also turns all your redundant creature tutors if you already have Hulk into Flash, which is very good. Mm-hmm. But then the deck that I think it might be best in is actually Pod. I think Pod might go back to playing Time Walk, because being able to use your creature tutors to find this, to then find Time Walk, you just have so many redundant copies.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Card's really powerful. It's going to be exciting to see exactly how big the impact is. It's certainly going to give more decks, more play. Like just like getting to tutor a lot makes playing decks harder, right? Like tutoring isn't easy, so it's potentially it's just going to make games more interesting. All right, that card aside, the next card we're talking about is Spell Snare. So this is a single blue mana instant. It's a counter spell. It counters target spell with converted mana cost 2, exactly 2.
There are a lot of good 2-drops.
Yeah.
This is probably like the 6th best counter spell. You play it most of the time if you're playing counter spells.
I had it at 9th, but I like this card a lot less than the average person.
I like it a lot. Just it's like the best counter spell to see in your opening hand on the draw.
For sure.
Like, you just get to play your land and then counter your 2-drop. You feel like you've almost won the game.
Yep, that part's certainly true. And look at the Watch Wolf getting snared.
It is getting snared. Is that a Watch Wolf or is it a? Is it
Fleecemane Lion?
Wild Mongrel?
No, it's a Watch Wolf. It's because it was from.
I knew it was Dissension originally.
Yeah. So it's that woof getting caught in the snare, the spell snare. The old art's gonna better demonstrate. I think that because there is different art. Anyway,
that is different. Yeah.
Next card we're talking about is negate. This is generic in a blue for an instant that says counter target non-creature spell.
I'm so glad they printed this negate art.
Yeah, that negate art.
Before there was. Don't get me started on the negate arts of old.
You didn't like the circle?
No.
I actually
Not
like
a
the
fan.
circle.
I love this negate art though. It's really pretty.
Yeah. Does it look? Do you have a foil? Does it look good in foil?
It does look great in foil.
That's what I imagined. Negate.
Oh God.
No, that one is definitely Corey. Sorry, we have Corey running tech today, and I don't know.
Oh no.
I don't know what she's done to us, but
I'm not the shield.
Holy moly, Jared! This is your punishment for making so many puns before the show. By the way.
God. This is the circle Liam was.
Yeah, this is the one I have. I think it's okay. Anyway, so negate's a very reasonable counterspell. It's also in the top 10. You're going to play it in a lot of decks. It does occasionally get cut, but you basically never feel bad about playing it.
Yeah, it's a little bit more meta dependent than some of the other ones. Like if you don't have a lot of controller combo running around, it's pretty reasonable to cut it.
Yep.
But there aren't too many metas without both
one or the other
of controller combo. So.
Yep. Next card we're talking about is Impulse. This is 1 and a blue for an instant. It says look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And if you have an old printing of this card, it then tells you to shuffle. Don't do that. This comes up maybe once every month or so where someone's got an old printing.
It used to be more before they reprinted it a bunch. Mm-hmm. Like there was a time when it was only old printing or it was in a FTV 20 maybe.
Yeah, that's where this art comes from.
Yeah. And so basically, if you had one, you probably had the old version. And if you never played it before, or never played against someone who told you not to, you just started to shuffle your library, and then everyone's like, no, don't do that. It's been errated.
So anyway, this card's very good. 2 mana looking for. Having something to do with your mana that you're potentially holding up for a counterspell is just always very powerful in blue decks. And yeah, this card's good enough to see play in combo decks, control decks, tempo decks. It's fine.
It's one of the best 2 mana instants that isn't pointed. Like this and Latinam's Legacy are currently my go-tos for I'm playing a bunch of counter spells. I want something to do if my opponent isn't doing anything.
Yep. All right, that's it for Blue Killer, and that was the longest section. Next we're on to black. The first card we have to talk about is Archfiend of Despair. So this is 6 black for a demon. It's a 6/6. It has flying. It says your opponents can't gain life. And at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life that player lost this turn. So it basically doubles the amount of life loss they get.
Yeah, if this guy lasts until end of turn.
So what do you imagine this getting played in?
I could see this getting played in as a reanimator target, or in a big black deck. That's Cabal Coffersing or Lake of the Deading this thing out early.
Fair enough.
Yeah, just because it's an insanely fast clock. Sometimes you just get to play this, attack them, and then they're toast.
Yep, makes sense. The next card we have to talk about is Stunning Reversal. This is 3 and a black for an instant that says the next time, and when this card got spoiled, the translation was wrong and didn't have the next time. It just said if you would lose the game.
Yeah. So
the next time you would lose the game, this turn, instead draw 7 cards and your life total becomes 1. Exile Stunning Reversal. So I want to use this card in Channel. That's what my dream is.
That's pretty exciting.
I think it's reasonable, but it's not as good as as maybe the best possible case. But yeah, that seems pretty sweet. This card just seems kind of interesting. I don't know.
I don't even hate it in a lot of combo decks.
Yeah.
Just in some combo decks, you just get to use it as this like pseudo Angel's Grace,
Mm-hmm.
and you just like, well, I don't have what I want yet. Like, all right, attack me.
Yeah.
All right,
I'll take
I'm at
it.
1. Please don't have a burn spell.
Yeah, I'll take a look at 7, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, seems okay. I don't know. This is one of the ones that I think is the hardest to predict what it's going to be good in, but it's a very unique and powerful effect, so it might see play.
Yeah, it's definitely cool and exciting.
Yeah. Next card we have to talk about is Diabolic Intent. This is 1 and a black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, and then it's DT. You search your library for a card and put that card into your hand. Then you shuffle your library. We've talked about this card a bunch. It was the best card you're not playing 2 or 3 episodes ago. In the Nuts and Bolts episode, it's the best card you're not playing. So Alex talked about it at length. Basically, in some decks, the sacrificing a creature is a bonus. And in some decks, it's not necessarily a bonus, but you just have so many creatures that you're willing to sacrifice one of them to get Demonic Tutor.
Yeah, Demonic Tutor is just such an insanely powerful card. Getting to play a 0-point Demonic Tutor in your deck is like super high upside.
Yeah, so if you're like a creature combo deck, this card's, and you have black mana in your deck, you should probably be looking to play this card. I think tokens decks, it's good in those decks as well. Basically, if you can very reliably have a creature that you're not going to miss too much lying around, this card's great to run because it just...
Yeah, if you have a lot of like incidental cheap creatures.
Also, how about this art, eh? I like the old art as well. I think the old art's reasonable, but this art's great.
I was actually going to say I'm not a huge fan of this art.
Oh, really?
But
You and I have different opinions on colors. Because that's what I like about this art, is like the bright color of the sacrificial knife.
I can see why you'd like it. And like purple's my favorite color, and I don't like this.
Yeah,
That's
right.
art.
Just like, I don't know, like the old art style's sweet too. Like this is also great. And there's also an invocation version.
We don't need to bring that up. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's true. This is how you can tell Graham's. you can tell Graham's. I was gonna say you could tell Graham's not on tech because that one didn't immediately pop up as soon as we started talking about it. I actually do think the cycle of these is really good though, because like the Entomb, the Dark Ritual, and the Diabolic Intent are all one story in the invocations, and I do like that actually.
Sure.
All right, next card we're talking about is Virtuous's Maneuver. So this is a sorcery. It's 2 and a black. For each player, choose friend or foe. Each friend returns a creature card from their graveyard to their hand. Each foe sacrifices a creature they control. This is the first instance we're seeing of this friend or foe mechanic, which is great. It's really interesting. And for Highlander, it's basically what I mean. You do one thing, your opponent does the other. This card's pretty good. I don't know, what kind of decks do you think this is going to see play in?
I think you want to be a deck with like a lot of removal. I was immediately thinking of like a Mardu deck that like plays some like cheap threats that might get removed and like has a lot of removal on their own, because like edicts aren't typically the best removal spells because they're always getting rid of their worst creature.
Yeah.
But if their worst creature is their only creature, it's pretty good for you.
Yeah.
So you want to be a deck that can like make that the case more often than not. You want them to have like not many creatures to choose from, and you want to be able to get a creature back. So
Yep. Seems reasonable. I think this card's like a high enough power level that it's probably going to find its way into something. I don't know exactly what yet, but yeah, I just think it's a pretty good card.
yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to red. The first card in red, I had mispronounced in my head ahead of time, but this is Nigella, the Blade Blossom, and I had this name as Nigella in my head, and I was going to make a Food Network joke, but now I've made it, so don't worry about it. Nigella Lawson, no one else watches. All right, that's fine. So Nigella is a 2 and a red for a legendary creature. She's a human warrior, and whenever a warrior attacks, you may have its controller create a 1/1 white warrior creature token that's tapped and attacking. So that ability is reasonable. It's a 3/2 that attacks with a 1/1. The real spice is that for Wooburg, white, blue, black, red, green, you get to untap all attacking creatures. They gain trample, lifelink, and haste until end of turn. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Activate this ability only during combat. So that's the exciting part with this card, is that we were sort of talking about, like, Jared and I have both played these sort of like 5-color domain zoo decks before. And I mean, this card is probably a slam dunk in those decks, because if you ever get to activate it, the game is probably over.
Are you ever going to put Bear Umbra on this card? Do you know what Bear Umbra does?
Is it the one that gives +3/+3 and
No, that's Boar Umbra.
Oh, what's
Bear Umbra?
Oh, it untaps your lands.
Green and untaps all +2/+2 and has whenever this creature attacks, untap all lands you control, and it has Totem Armor.
Holy. Well, I mean,
Can I say attack forever?
I mean, that is a bona fide combo. All right. Well, yeah. Now I know what I'm doing next week.
Perfect.
Yeah, so anyway, this card's sweet. It's really high power level, really splashy. I think it's going to find a home in something, because even ignoring the bottom Wooburg activation text, it's not actually a terrible card.
No, it's
attacking is a 3/2 that makes an extra 1/1 every time it attacks, and whenever any warrior attacks. Doesn't even say non-token. So if you get in once, then that warrior token
Holy cow,
gets to just
I didn't
keep,
actually read that. Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah, she doesn't have to keep attacking herself.
And there's got to be some like incidental good warriors,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I think so. I think this card's really cool. I look forward to it. The next card we're talking about, Chain Lightning. Single red mana for a sorcery. Chain Lightning deals 3 damage to any creature or any target. That player, whoa. All right, this card has been errated. Well, not errated, but it got changed with the redirection rule. So Chain Lightning deals 3 damage to any target. Then that player or that permanent's controller may play red. If the player does, they may copy this spell and may choose a new target for that copy. Holy, is that wordy.
It was actually almost that bad before.
I mean, I know it wasn't good. So the basic gist is that you cast this, and if you cast it on something your opponent controls, they can pay red to bounce it back at you. This is just a reasonable burn spell.
Yeah,
it's like second or third best.
It's sort of similar to Swords to Plowshares if you're playing a red deck and you want to point flaming energy at things, you're probably going to play this card.
I think it's like electric energy but I mean, I don't know. Those
Sure.
both involve heat. All right, fine. Semantics. All right, that's all for red. It's not a super deep set for red. We'll talk about the other stuff in filler. We're on to green now. We're going to talk about Brambles Sovereign first. So this is 2 green for a Dryad. It's a 4/4, and whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield, you may pay 1 and a green. If you do, that creature's controller creates a token that's a copy of that creature. All right, so this is never going to happen, but it did occur to me that this is the counter to Phage the Untouchable. Because if they hardcast Phage and then you get to activate this and then the token kills them, like it's never going to come up, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah, you can give your opponent extra copies of their creatures if you want to.
You may, yes. I don't know if that's
maybe
ever
you have a
matter.
Rampaging Ferocodon in play.
That's true. That could matter. So what do you envision this card being good in? I hadn't really thought about it that much.
I could see playing this in like a hoof deck. I could see playing this basically in any big mana creature deck. I don't think it's insane to see it in pod. You probably don't have. It's probably a little too cute for pod. That deck's really tight. But yeah, just the upside on this card is so high. It's a 4-mana 4/4, so it like dodges lots and lots of removal. You need a pretty real removal spell to get this thing off the board, and just potentially provides so much advantage.
Fair enough. All right, the next card we have is Grathama, the All-Devouring. One of the more interesting power and toughness lines in a while. So this is 3 green for a legendary creature worm. It's a 10/8. And other creatures have, whenever this creature attacks, you may have it fight Grathama, All-Devouring. When Grathama leaves the battlefield, each creature or each player draws cards equal to the amount of damage dealt to Grathama this turn by sources they controlled. Exciting card. So this thing's massive.
Real big.
Gigantic, if you will. And so what Jared was saying, and I thought about it more, I do agree with it, is that the turn you play this, it's almost certainly the biggest thing on the battlefield, and it's probably twice as big as the next biggest thing on the battlefield. And your opponent is basically obliged to like kill it as soon as possible, and it's not actually that easy to kill. So I think green-red monsters decks.
Cards that was designed for multiplayer that might just end up being super busted in single player.
Yeah.
Like or like one-on-one.
The blow-up potential is pretty high. Like if they just if it's a game where the board doesn't matter that much, like this is your only threat, and they're like, all right, sack my board, draw 10. Like that's a little awkward.
That is rough, but
I don't know. Then you just get a powerful Magic story out of it. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. I'm not worried about it.
As you say in green-red monsters, if you're playing like Mana Dork, powerful 3-drop, powerful 4-drop, there's a chance like at least the 3-drop or the 4-drop 8 removal. Yeah. And then if you're able to curve into this, I don't see how they're ever winning that game of Magic.
Yep. Fair enough. All right, the next card we're talking about is Purr's Whim. Pier. I actually don't know how to pronounce this card. I'll be honest here. I think it's.
I like Pier.
I have no idea. Anyway, so this is a 3 and a green for a sorcery. For each player, choose friend or foe. Each friend searches their library for a land card and puts it onto the battlefield tapped. Then they shuffle their library. Each foe sacrifices an artifact or enchantment they control. So the power on this card is the friend part. Getting any land onto the battlefield is a really powerful effect. We see Academy decks going as far as to playing Reap and Sow to get a similar effect. And this is
Reap and Sow puts it untapped, though, right?
It does.
Yeah.
Reap and Sow is probably better, but just getting any land out of your deck is going to be something that I think multiple decks are going to be interested in. This is another card that can go into like a black-green turbo depth strategy, which I think is a strategy that's getting closer and closer to actually being competitive.
I agree.
I think it's still not quite there yet, but this is definitely a card that helps. And then the foe side is extra. If you get value out of it, fantastic. But if you don't, you're not that worried about it. Your deck should be constructed in a way where the friend side is enough to make this card playable on its own, I think.
Yep.
The next card we're talking about is Beast Within. So this is 2 and a green for an instant. It says destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. What do you think about this card?
I think this card is underplayed. I think it saw play, like maybe a bunch of play maybe 40 years ago, and then people just stopped playing it, and now Academy decks are rearing their ugly heads again, and I think this is one of the cards that people should start putting in their decks to...
Not Molder Slug, then.
Not so much. Just the fact that this is an instant that can answer any key permanent. It can hit the Paradox Engine, it can hit the Memory Jar they're trying to pass the turn with, it can hit
the
Academy.
Yeah. And they're very rarely going to use the 3/3 in a way that matters. And worst case, do you like blow up a land that you don't need to make a 3/3?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. Next card we're talking about is Pulse of Murasa. This is another Pauper All-Star. So this is 2 and a green for an instant. It says return target creature or land card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. You gain 6 life. So you just think this card's underplayed, right? That's the way you put it on the list?
Yeah, I think this is a really valuable tool for mid-range decks in an aggro-heavy meta. I think just being able to like gain the 6 life is huge. Reuse maybe one of the core creatures you got that got you to the later stages of the game. Like, say they had to slug through a Kitchen Finks or a Courser and they eventually answered it or something. Getting the 6 life plus the rebuy on a creature like that is just lights out against a mono red deck, probably a white deck as well.
Fair enough. Makes sense. All right, next card we're talking about is Sky Shroud Claim. This is 3 and a green for a sorcerer that says search your library for up to 2 forest cards, put them on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So this gets 2 forest cards untapped. It's great. This is the best card in the Scapeshift deck. Best not pointed card in the Scapeshift deck.
Best not pointed, not Scapeshift card in the Scapeshift deck.
I might even be better than Scapeshift. It even enables your other strategies. Like it lets you cast your big idiots.
What big idiots are you playing?
I don't know, like Primeval Titan.
I thought we cut that card like a year ago.
Well, not from the rug version. Anyway, so this card's very good. And I actually think more decks should be playing it. I think it's just a powerful ramp spell that secretly only costs 2 a lot of the time, because you can especially, I think I should rephrase. I think especially blue-green decks should be playing this, because the ability to go get Tropical Island and Breeding Pool, those sorts of lands, means that you can often cast it and leave a counter spell up on your turn. And I think that that's really powerful and something that more decks would be interested in. And just getting a jump from 4 to 6 mana is a big game.
Yep.
The next card we're talking about, we're in the artifacts now, is Sentinel Tower. So this is 4 generic for an artifact that says, whenever an instant or sorcery spell is cast during your turn, Sentinel Tower deals damage to any target equal to 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells cast before that spell this turn. This card's exciting.
Yeah, so notice it doesn't say you. So it counts your opponent's instants and sorceries as well, which is a big deal. Like, if you're a combo deck trying to go off, their counter spells start Shocking, then Flame Javelin,
yeah,
then
Lava
Thunderous,
Axing.
Yeah, Thunderous Wrathing. Yeah, like this card's insane. I think we were talking and we think it might be better than Aetherflux Reservoir and High Tide, which we've been playing as an alternate win con. Although the life gain is really nice in
Yeah, I just think that this kills faster than Reservoir.
It definitely does.
Because you only have to cast 6 spells after you cast this to 20 someone.
Yeah, but the ability to gain the incidental life with Reservoir is a big deal against the aggro decks a lot of the time.
I actually think this is a card that might spawn its own archetype. I'll be honest. I think that it's possible. It's potentially powerful enough. I also think that it's possible some of the Academy decks will look into playing this card, because it's just something that you can get down early. It's going to count towards your Academy count, and it helps like clean up the board. Like, it's actually a good card against aggro because it's any target. It's not just a player.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, so you can use it to, like, if you're...
I actually don't think you can play this in Academy. Because it only counts instants and sorceries.
Okay, yeah. So it's probably not playable in Academy. Fair enough. All right. Well, I don't know. I think it's sweet. It's definitely a card that's worth exploring.
Yeah.
Maybe Dragonstorm can play this card.
That's possible.
Actually, that sounds pretty good. Dragonstorm.
All right.
Got to play more of that deck. All right, so we're going to move on to the multicolor here. The first multicolor card we have is Archon of Valor's Reach. This is 4 green-white for a creature Archon. It's a 5/6. It has Flying, Vigilance, and Trample. As Archon of Valor's Reach enters the battlefield, choose Artifact, Enchantment, Instant, Sorcery, or Planeswalker. Players can't cast spells of the chosen type. So, this is Grand Abolisher's big Archon.
I mean, it's a little different than Grand Abolisher.
Yeah, and then it's both turns.
Yeah, and it's like both players. It is symmetrical.
It's also not a cleric.
Yeah, but getting to shut off one of your opponent's like key types, it's just a very unique effect and certainly very powerful. Like
Also,
if you
do you see that griffin? Like, look at the cat.
Yeah, that's like a Thundercat if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I haven't seen one, so you know.
That might inform your analysis. But yeah, definitely powerful.
Yeah, like getting to shut off artifacts against the Academy deck is likely just lights out.
I would hope so.
They probably can't win.
All right, the last card we're talking about in the killer section is Last One Standing. Somewhat thematic, you might think.
Yeah.
So this is 1 black-red for a sorcery. It says choose a creature at random, then destroy the rest. So if you're a Hearthstone player, this is Brawl, the warrior card, the 5-mana warrior card. Jared and I don't know how to evaluate this card super well, but we think it's a powerful enough effect. Like 3 mana to wipe most of the board is pretty good.
Yeah. I think this could potentially be a Sweet Aristocrats card.
Mm-hmm. That's plausible.
Is what I actually have now thought that it might be.
Because you have said before that sometimes as aristocrats, the biggest thing you want is just a way to sack your whole board.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's true. Like sometimes you just like
want your whole board to die.
You want a sack outlet so you have like a Blood Artist or something, and you just need a sack outlet to win the game. And this
actually in aristocrats, this card sounds really good. Actually,
yeah.
Against the creature decks, you get to like kind of break parity because your things are going to leave things behind.
Yeah. The only thing I'm worried about is like. I think it might just be good in the matchups that are already really good for you.
Which are the creature decks?
So,
okay.
Worth testing maybe, but...
Yep.
Yeah. All right,
on to the filler. So we're going to go through these a little faster probably and just kind of talk about them quickly. The first one in white is Land Tax. So this is a single white for an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for up to 3 basic land cards, reveal them, put them into your hand. If you do, shuffle your library.
So this is very niche playable in like... some Staxy type decks where you're like blowing up lands, you're playing a lot of mana rocks, don't necessarily always have more lands than your opponent, and you're playing Scroll Rack and Ways to Find It. Because really, if you're not playing Scroll Rack, Land Tax is not worth it in this format on its own, I don't think.
Fair enough. Next card we have to talk about is Core Spirit Dancer. This is 1 and a white for a Core Wizard. It has +2/+2 for each aura attached to it, and whenever you cast an aura spell, you may draw a card. This card is playable in exactly the Boggles deck.
Yes.
There is a Boggles deck. It's
Yes.
medium. This card's very good in it. It's medium minus?
Yeah, medium minus.
Okay. The next card we have to talk about is Mangara of Corondor. It's 1 white for a legendary creature, human wizard. And it's a 1/1. You can tap it and exile Mangara of Corondor and target permanent.
There's some shenanigans with Blinky stuff you can do because it doesn't exile as part of the cost. So if you blink it with its ability on the stack, you get to do it again.
You get to like Caracas it or
Classic
whatever.
is Caracas, yeah. But if you have like
The
momentary blink or Resto Angel or something.
Essence Flux.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, on to blue. The first blue card we have is Game Plan. So this is a new card. It's 5 and a blue for a sorcery. It has assist. So if your opponent wants to, they can help you cast this spell.
Yeah, I'm a little confused as to how assist actually works.
I've seen this question asked on Twitter. So here's the deal. If you say, I would like to cast this, would you like to help me cast it? And the person says, yes, I will pay this amount of mana. And then you put it on the stack and they say, actually, I was lying. You get to take it off the stack. So it's like you declare that you're going to cast it, then ask whether they're going to pay some of the cost. Then if they renege on paying some of the costs, you can take it off the stack. So you're not locked into playing this card. It's really weird.
All right.
Not going to come up in Highlander. Going to come up in Commander a bunch, I think.
I just feel like that's just leaves the door way too open for people to like just mess with their opponents.
I agree. It's weird, but
Yeah.
you do get to take it
Not-
off the stack.
Not
at
a
least.
not a fan of.
So
how
this
that
is
works.
6 mana Time Twister. The reason we have it on here is because it's a powerful splashy effect. It's probably not good enough. Time Reversals is a 5 mana card that does the same thing. So if you want another Time Twister, that's probably the effect you want access to. The only reason you might want to play Game Plan instead is that it's a single blue mana instead of double. And if for whatever reason your deck is making an excess amount of mana, but has a hard time getting access to blue, then maybe you want to play this card instead. But I have a hard time imagining those situations. So we wanted to talk about it. The next card we're talking about is Toothy Imaginary Friend. He has a lot of teeth. So this is, well, it's an illusion, I suppose. So 3 and a blue, this is a 1/1. It partners with Imaginative Rascal. We'll talk about that in a little bit. When you draw a card, you put a 1/1 counter on Toothy Imaginary Friend, and when Toothy leaves the battlefield, draw a card for each 1/1 counter on it. So this is kind of comparable to Chasm Skulker, a card that's been in and out of the Highlander format, currently out, I would say, not played super widely.
Yeah.
But drawing a card is much better than creating little squids.
Yes.
Which is not a sentence I expected to say today, but it's a sentence I'm saying. Cards better than squids, and
But 3 mana is better than 4, so.
so who knows, right?
Yeah.
This also draws a card because Jared and I were talking about it. We do think Per is maybe playable in this deck, so the fact that it's 3 mana, draw a card plus all this other stuff, who knows? But there definitely is some fun stuff you can do. Like if you ever get to assemble this plus Brainstorm, you're like laughing all the way to the bank.
Oh yeah.
Like stuff like that is quite good. So could be interesting.
This plus Sylvan Library, the dream.
The mama. Next card we're talking about is Fumble. This is 1 and a blue for an instant. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Gain control of all auras and equipment that were attached to it, and then attach them to another creature. This is kind of a weird one. You were actually like, I'm actually kind of secretly excited about this card.
Yeah, so I think this card may be secret busted. It's a little bit of a meta call, but like bounce spells are like pretty reasonable as they are. 2 mana is like about what you want to pay for it. And then just like potentially getting to take your opponent's GT and attach it to your creature, or take your opponent's sword mid-combat, attach it to your creature. Like, that's insane.
It's
like,
very good.
If you get to attack them, like bounce their creature with a sword, put sword on your untapped creature, get sword trigger, or do the same with GT, or do the same with Batterskull. Like,
yeah, they probably just die on the
you
spot.
probably just won. So like this card has such high blow up potential.
Yeah, could be worth trying.
Yeah, if like the Pattern of Rebirth deck like just puts Pattern on a card, because sometimes they do, and they're like, yeah, you have to kill this card. Like, you just like get to bounce it and put Pattern on one of your cards.
You have to also have creatures, so that kind of lowers the number of decks that this is like truly great in. But still, there's a bunch of blue decks that have creatures. Like, that's not impossible.
Yeah.
This card's really cool. All right, the next card we're talking about is Peregrine Drake. This is 4 and a blue for a 2/3 flying Drake that says when Peregrine Drake enters the battlefield, untap up to 5 lands. This card broke Pauper. It hasn't broken Highlander. It's good in exactly High Tide, and basically nothing else.
Yes.
Play it in High Tide. Don't play it in anything else.
It's good in Heartbeat Storm.
Right. 5-color Heartbeat Storm, the greatest roller coaster you'll ever go on. Also acceptable in that deck. All right, the next card we're talking about in black is Nirkana Revenant. This is 4 black for a Vampire Shade. When you tap a swamp for mana, add black to your mana pool, and then it's a shade. So for a black, it can get +1/+1, and it's a 4/4. So this is what, playable in big black?
I don't even usually play it in big black. It's usually just a little too slow. I've found you really like need your 6 drops to like win you the game and create like a bunch of value immediately. Like, we're looking at like Grave Titan, Demon Lord, Belzenlock, Planeswalkers, the Immortal Sun, that sort of deal.
Fair enough. So why are we talking about it? We just wanted to caution people. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess this is a card you can play in big black if you don't have access to those other ones.
You can play it, and it's a really popular card in Commander. I know, but it's just one of those cards that doesn't port over to Highlander quite as well. So it's like, even though it may look super good and splashy, like, you're not often going much bigger than 6. So playing a mana doubler on 6, like,
Isn't great.
yeah, you just like Crypt Ghast is where you want to be in Highlander.
Fair enough. Next card we're talking about is NYX Aphid. This is 1 black for an elemental. It's a 7/7, and as it comes into play, you choose an opponent. NYX Aphid gets -1/-1 for each card in the chosen opponent's hand. I don't know how many people have tried this card. it's typically not very good.
No, it's like just gives your opponent too much play. Like
Yeah.
if they ever go up to 7 cards, this card
Just
dies. Like
Yeah. I do have an Italian NYX Aphid, which is a shame. I really wish I could play it. I opened it in Italy. I went to a store on like the southern coast of Italy, and this is the card they had.
sick.
Yeah, it was a great time.
You're like 3 mana 7/7. I don't know what it does.
That
but
was actually exactly my thought.
here it is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the one I have. I also have an Italian Thornling. Really, I got a bunch of very wordy cards well in Italy.
Yeah, the best kind to have in a foreign language.
Yeah. The next card we're talking about is Thrilling Encore. So this is 4 and a black for an instant. You put onto the battlefield under your control all creatures, cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. So this card is splashy. It's as though a 400-pound person did a belly flop into a large pool. That kind of splash we're talking about here. It's big splash. Large blue whale in a small pond.
Yeah, it's very splashy. It's probably too much mana and a little too narrow to make waves in Highlander, unfortunately.
Unlike the blue whale, which probably makes a lot of waves.
You just really aren't letting this die.
No.
Yeah, so it's just a little too narrow and a little too much mana. Like you really need your opponent to wrath. You probably can't afford to be the one wrathing and planning to cast this in the same turn because that's too much mana. So you really need your opponent to be killing all creatures, and there aren't that many times that happens.
Okay, fair enough. The next card we're talking about is Mindblade Render. This is 1 and a black for an Azra warrior. I've heard people talking about these are basically Tieflings. I don't know if you're familiar. It's like the D&D character type.
I was gonna ask about that.
That's what I've heard. I don't actually know well enough, but that's sort of what I saw people talking about. So whenever it's a 1/3, and whenever your opponents are dealt combat damage, if any of that damage was dealt by a warrior, you draw a card and you lose a life. So this is a Dark Confidant style effect. It's potentially pretty powerful. I mean, this is a 1/3 that every time it hits them, you draw a card and lose a life, which is quite good. It matches well with Nigella. That's a powerful combination. It gets
Definitely,
good synergy. And like we were saying with Nigella, there are some warriors. There are enough kind of like warriors that have, or creatures that have warrior sort of stapled onto them that they're, I don't know, this is potentially a playable card.
Yeah, and they're starting to, there are like other Warrior Matters cards in the set that we're not talking about, and if they keep printing, like, my guess is maybe like 2 more sets worth of Warriors, then there might be a Highlander deck for them.
Because in cons there were some Warrior Matters cards as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's fair. The next card we're talking about is Doomed Dissenter. This is 1 and a black for a 1/1 human. When Doomed Dissenter dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. This goes in exactly Aristocrats.
Yep.
If you're playing Aristocrats, get your Doomed Dissenters now. Now with a non-Amonkhet set symbol, if you'd like.
Yes.
Next card we're talking about is Rowan Kenneth. This is a 4 red legendary planeswalker Rowan. This doesn't sound as weird as Will, by the way. Being like a legendary planeswalker Will, I don't know. It's just like, it's so blunt. Rowan sounds better. Anyway, so this also comes in at 4, also costs 6, and it partners with Will Kenneth and can be your commander. For +2, during target player's next turn, each creature that player controls attacks if able. For -2, Rowan Kenneth deals 3 damage to each tapped creature target player controls. And then the -8 is target player gets an emblem with, whenever you activate an ability that isn't a mana ability, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy.
So I think when comparing this card to Will, which is the obvious comparison, the +2 is just like much worse. It doesn't defend at all. It actively doesn't defend.
Yeah.
It in fact forces your opponent to beat down on likely her. The -2 is potentially very good, but requires your opponent to likely have not developed their board that turn and to have attacked. Which is like pretty good when you're behind. So that ability is like medium. I'd still rather draw 2 cards and have all my stuff cost less. And the -8, which is whenever you activate an ability, copy it, as opposed to whenever you cast an instance or sorcery, copy it.
Much less good.
Yeah, it's just not
This
not
art,
quite
though.
not quite cutting the mustard for me.
Pretty sick art. I'm a fan of that.
Yeah, I think the art is sweet. Like the sort of like panorama
Yeah.
is cool.
Yeah.
But
The card,
yeah.
unfortunately, a little disappointing. It's also not very red, right? There's not a whole lot of red decks that are interested in these kinds of effects.
Yeah, exactly.
The next card we're talking about is Expedite. This is a single red mana for an instant. Says target creature gains haste until end of turn. Draw a card. It's playable in like maybe one deck. There's sort of like
Two.
Yeah, the domain pump spells deck.
Yeah,
and then the
like prowess deck.
Yeah, and then the sort of spells matter deck.
And I also think you also play it in Jeskai Ascendancy.
Oh right, yeah, and Jeskai Ascendancy, where you want to be able to go off on the turn you have your Ascendancy in play. That deck's not very good though.
No.
So yeah, we figured we'd mention it, but it's not a life-changing kind of card. No. The next card we're talking about is Shock. Speaking of not life-changing cards, this is 1 red for an instant, and Shock deals 2 damage to any target. This gets played in burn.
Yeah.
You play the Shocks, and this one is
a Shock.
It's a Shock. It's exactly Shock. It's the most vanilla of the Shocks, but it's a Shock. Next card we're talking about is Bonus Round. So this is 1 red for a sorcery, and until end of turn, whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, that player copies it and may choose new targets for the copies.
So notably, this isn't just you; it's also your opponent.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
So if they want to, end step cast their Eladamri's Call, they get 2 creatures.
Yeah, it's fine. They're dead. So I have
or you're dead.
Possibly. I have no idea what deck this card goes into, but it's powerful in the sense that like getting to double a bunch of things for only 3 mana is potentially busted. I don't know where, I don't know when, but I'm going to try it, I think, in something. I haven't figured out what I want to play it in yet, but some kind of Sentinel Tower Storm deck, probably. I think it's going to be great.
All right.
Next card we're talking about is green. It's doubling season. We're really glad that Alex isn't here this week so that smoke doesn't billow out his ears as we talk about this card, because this is a commander card that Alex is not hugely fond of. I've actually died to this card in Highlander before.
You died with my deck.
Did I? Was I playing your deck?
Yeah, the blue-white deck.
Oh, right. Yeah. More on that later. In fact, I'm changing my Powerful Magic story. We'll tell that story instead. It's a good one. But so this card is, again, splashy and almost always too slow in Highlander. In the Planeswalker decks, you can play it. But outside of that, it's not ubiquitous like it is in Commander. And so we just wanted to mention that because it's a big reprint. It's important. We're sure a lot of people are interested. I actually also like this art a lot more than the original Doubling Season art.
I really, really like this art.
Art is,
huge fan.
Yeah, pretty sick. But yeah, so if you're playing a Planeswalker deck, feel free to play it. But outside of that, it doesn't have a whole lot of utility.
No.
The next card we're talking about is Generous Patron. So this is 2 and a green for an Elf Advisor. It's a 1/4, and when Generous Patron enters the battlefield, it supports 2. So this is put a +1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures, and when you put a 1 or more counters on a creature you don't control, draw a card. So this card is weird. It doesn't actually feed its own ability, but maybe in some weird like -1/-1 counter strategy, it might be good.
Well, it can feed its own ability.
Right, because you can support your opponent's creatures.
You can. It's a little weird. It like has potential, I think.
Yeah, I mean, really, we just put this on the list to plug the Patreon again. So thanks so much to all of you who support. No, I'm kidding. That's not actually why. But yeah, so this card is like a reasonable power level card. The second line of text is interesting.
Yeah, you really want to be casting like Black Sun Zenith or Archfiend of Ifnir.
Yeah, okay, those both sound
something
pretty
like
good.
that.
Yeah. So we haven't figured out exactly where we think this card is good, but oh my god, that art's so good. Anyway, sorry. But it is probably like it is potentially playable in a deck. Like I wouldn't be shocked to see this in a deck that like 3-1s a tournament in like a couple of months. Like someone figures out a strategy where they can get a lot of value out of this. I can't see it myself, but
it's also just potentially a lot of stats. Like you're getting
a 2/5, right?
You're getting a.
Oh, it's other.
Yeah, you're getting a 1/4 that also puts 2/2 worth of other stats. So you're basically getting like 3/6 worth of stats for 3 mana, which is like a lot. It's a lot of stats.
Okay. Well, I don't know. We'll see. The next card we're talking about is Per Imaginative Rascals. This is 2 and a green for a legendary creature. It's a human, and it's a 1/1. It partners with Toothy Imaginary Friend, the card we talked about previous, and if one or more counters would be put on a permanent your team controls, that many plus one of each of those counters are put on that permanent instead. So this is kind of a Winding Constrictor-esque card.
Yes.
And there are decks that have played Winding Constrictor. There's like an Abzan +1/+1 counters matters deck that a friend of the show, Matt, has played. That deck's actually better than I think a lot of people thought.
I agree.
And this is another card that I think he would very gladly play.
Yeah, and I think you could play it as a Sultai deck as well.
Yep, that sounds very reasonable.
Yeah.
Yep. Card's just like fine. It says draw a card. I think if you can get both of them in the same deck, I think you want to.
Exactly.
Because these cards are a little underwhelming, but when you attach draw another card to them, they get a lot better.
Exactly.
The next card we're talking about is Seedborn Muse. This is 3 green for a 2/4 spirit. Untap all permanents you controlled during each other player's untap step. So this is another fairly popular commander card that just doesn't really see play in the Highlander format.
Yeah.
In part because Prophet of Crucifix got printed, and so if you were to play a card like this, you'd probably play that instead.
Yes.
And then in other part, because this effect just isn't good enough.
It's not as strong. Like, you're not untapping 4 times. You're untapping an extra time, and you're paying 5 mana for that effect. It's just, like, too much.
Yep. The next card we're talking about is Vigor. This is 3 green for an Elemental Incarnation, one of my favorite creature types. It's a 6/6 with trample. If damage would be dealt to another creature you control, prevent that damage, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature for each 1 damage rendered that way, and when it's put into the graveyard, you shuffle it into its owner's library. Again, card that you might think would see some play, but really just doesn't.
No.
The problem lies in the fact that the second ability isn't that relevant in Highlander. Like, this is an expensive card that is often just a 6/6 that doesn't really do anything else.
Yeah, like, it obviously has some board states where it'll do a lot. Like, if you're like in like a board stall situation, it's insane.
Yeah.
But you really can't afford to be playing a card that's only good when you're stalled out. And lots of the popular ways to break those board stalls is to Wrath, and that just doesn't do much against Wrath.
This, yeah. The next card we're talking about is Veteran Explorers. This is 1 green for a human soldier scout. When Veteran Explorer dies, each player may search their library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield. Then each player who searches their library this way shuffles it, and it's a 1/1. This is like a super ramp card. It even gets the basic lands untapped, but it's symmetrical. So I've done some experimentation with this card in Scapeshift. It was okay, but not great.
I love this card in Scapeshift.
Yeah, we had mixed opinions. And then, like, maybe there's some other strategies where this card's good. I probably honestly should have been playing it in Dragonstorm. I think it's probably good in Dragonstorm because you just want basic lands in that deck so badly. But yeah, so powerful effect, maybe an effect that could get more play as people sort of develop new decks, but worth keeping an eye on. If you open one, might be worth holding on to.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Then the last card we're talking about, this is the last card of the filler and the last card of the set review, is we're kind of going out on a not really a bang here. We're talking about Elvish Visionary.
Oh, yeah.
This card's fine. It's 1 and a green for
Yeah.
an Elf Shaman. When Elvish Visionary enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and it's a 1/1.
It doesn't really see much play in Hoof anymore. It still sees play in the
Alurin.
elf tribal deck.
And Alurin.
Alurin deck, for
Yeah.
sure.
It's fine.
You could definitely play it in Food Chain as well if you want to.
Yeah, and it's not that it's a bad card. It's just that it's a card that's sort of slowly been outmatched as WotC continues to print better and better creatures. Just you've started to get better things, and you can't really afford to play a card like Elvish Visionary anymore. Like cards like Duskwatch Recruiter, that sort of thing, have started to fill those sort of slots.
Just cards that have like a little more text to them can potentially take over the game as opposed to just cantripping.
Yep. And that's it. That's all we got for our Battlebond set review. We got through it pretty quick. Hope you caught it all. Thanks for sticking around if you have. We're now going to close the show with our closing segment, and this is Powerful Magic. And I was going to tell one story, but Jen reminded me of the time I got absolutely slaughtered by Doubling Season, so we're going to tell that story instead. So the context of this story is I'm playing against Nathan, who for the last, at the time of the story, 3 or 4 weeks has been playing this green-white Planeswalkers deck, trying to get to 3-1 because he wants to post it on the Facebook page Threads of results, but doesn't want to post it without having a winning record. So he's been playing this deck a lot. And we get paired in round 1, and I'm playing blue-white control. This matchup should be good for me. In fact, should be close to unlosable.
I don't know. He has a bunch of planeswalkers, so if he just like exhausts you of counter spells.
This is where it gets somewhat sketchy. I was playing the like 21 counterspell version of blue-white control. So, I mean, it should have been a good matchup. But what happened basically is that we both developed our mana in the early game, did some reasonable stuff, and then on like turn 4, Nathan plays a Johnny. It costs 6. A Johnny, not Mentor of Heroes, not Unyielding. Maybe it was.
Unyielding is the 6.
It is a Johnny Unyielding? Okay,
yes.
I think it's a Johnny Unyielding. Anyway, this card is messed up. This card's so unfair. So this card, it's 4 green-white, and it's +1. Yeah, this is the monster. It's +2, is reveal the top 3 cards of your library and put all non-land permanence cards revealed that way into your hand, then the rest on the bottom. So this card like has the potential to recall you, and his deck is just like does not have very many instants and sorceries. So like it doesn't get the lands, but it gets everything else. And he cast this just like into like 6 open mana.
Savage.
I just didn't have a counter spell. I like dug for it. I cast a Dig Through Time with 2 mana up. I missed, didn't find any counter spells, and this resolved. It then proceeded to draw him, I would guess, like maybe 15 cards over the course of this game. And I continued to fail to find counter spells, which meant that I was dealing with the board reasonably with like my removal spells and my wraths, but he got Doubling Season online. And so now, all of a sudden, he was like playing Planeswalkers and ultimating them. And here's the crazy part about this story. I was maybe gonna win at like varying different points if you're sort of like looking at like who was favored, the sort of like bar they have on the
advantage bar.
Yeah, exactly. There were like points at which it was like looked pretty likely I was gonna win. So there's one point in the game where I just decided, okay, there's no way I can win unless I just attack with this Celestial Colonnade every turn for the rest of the game. And so I start doing that. I get him down to 1. Celestial Colonnade is the blue-white creature land, so this
turns into a 4/4 flyer for 5 mana.
With Vigilance even.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. So I have him down to 1, and then he plays a Johnny...
Mentor of Heroes.
Mentor of Heroes. Yes, this is the other problem card.
Gains 100.
Yeah, and since he has Doubling Season in play, it comes in at 8. He -8s it, gains 100 life, goes to 101. So then that plans out the window.
Yeah,
but I have a Jace the Mind Sculptor in play.
In.
So now I have a Jace the Mind Sculptor in play. I'm like ticking up my Jace. I'm like getting close to ultimating my Jace. At which point he plays the 3 mana Nissa. No, that wasn't it. How did he draw 20 cards?
I think he did play 3 mana Nissa.
Yeah, sorry. He had 3 mana Nissa in play at the very least, and he ultimated it. So he gained 20 life and drew 20 cards. But I had the turn before Vendilion clicked him in his upkeep and like put a Walking Ballista on the bottom of the deck, which is how he was going to kill me. But then he like shuffled with a fetch land. He was also kind of close to decking because he drawn so many cards from all these Planeswalkers. I mean, like this whole game was just crazy, right? There was like, as I was trying to protect this Jace, I had a turn where I went like Cryptic Command, tap your team. Then the next turn I settled the wreckage. Then the next turn I cast Comeuppance. Then I Snapcastered the Comeuppance. Like it was just like this desperate crawl to not die. And then I eventually died to a Walking Ballista that I think, I forget how much mana he spent on this Walking Ballista.
Much?
It was a lot. It was at least 40.
Powerful.
Yeah, and so then I died to the Walking Ballista. It was very sad. I lost the game. And then time got called, so I lost the match in 1. It took us 51 minutes to play the first game of our match. I lost to Doubling Season. I also lost to, I lost to a lot of things. Walking Ballista plus Doubling Season, small combo as well.
Pretty good.
Yeah. So that's my powerful Magic story. So that's our episode for today after all of that. We want to thank you again, as usual, for watching and also for supporting. We won't have any deck lists in the bottom, but other than that, it should be good. So thanks so much for supporting at Patreon, at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. We couldn't do this without your support, and until next week, see you later.